Chapter 13. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, if a man has on his skin a growth or a mark or a white place, and it becomes the disease of a leper, let him be taken to Aaron the priest, or to one of the priests, his sons, and if, when the priest sees the mark on his skin, the hair on the place is turned white and the mark seems to go deeper than the skin, it is the mark of a leper, and the priest, after looking at him, will say that he is unclean. But if the mark on his skin is white, and does not seem to go deeper than the skin, and the hair on it is not turned white, then the priest will keep him shut up for 7 days, and the priest is to see him on the 7th day, and if, in his opinion, the place on his skin has not become worse and is not increased in size, then the priest will keep him shut up for 7 days more, and the priest is to see him again on the 7th day, and if the mark is less bright and is not increased on his skin, then let the priest say that he is clean, it is only a skin mark, and after his clothing has been washed he will be clean. But if the size of the mark on his skin is increased after he has been seen by the priest, let him go to the priest again, and if, after looking at him, he sees that the mark is increased in his skin, let the priest say that he is unclean, he is a leper. When the disease of a leper is seen on a man, let him be taken to the priest, and if the priest sees that there is a white growth on the skin, and the hair is turned white, and there is diseased flesh in the growth, it is an old disease in the skin of his flesh, and the priest will say that he is unclean, he will not have to be shut up, for he is clearly unclean. And if the disease comes out all over his skin, from his head to his feet, as far as the priest is able to see, and if the priest sees that all his flesh is covered with the leper's disease, the priest will say that he is clean, it is all turned white, he is clean. But whenever diseased flesh is seen on him, he will be unclean. And when the priest sees the diseased flesh he will say that he is unclean, the diseased flesh is unclean, he is a leper. Or if the diseased flesh is turned again and changed to white, then he is to come to the priest, and the priest will see him, and if the place is turned white, then the priest will say that he is free from the disease. And if a bad place has came out on the skin and is well again, and on the same place there is a white growth of a bright mark, red and white, then let the priest see it, and after looking at it, if it seems to go deeper than the skin, and the hair on it is turned white, then the priest will say that the man is unclean, it is the leper's disease, it has come out in the bad place. But if, after looking at it, he sees that there are no white hairs on it, and it is not deeper than the skin, and it is not very bright, then let the priest keep him shut up for 7 days, and if it is increasing on the skin, the priest will say that he is unclean, it is a disease. But if the bright mark keeps in the same place and gets no greater, it is the mark of the old wound, and the priest will say that he is clean. Or if there is a burn on the skin of the flesh, and if the diseased flesh in the burn becomes a bright place, red and white or white, the priest is to see it, and if the hair on the bright place is turned white and it seems to go deeper than the skin, he is a leper, it has come out in the burn, and the priest will say that he is unclean, it is the leper's disease. But if, after looking at it, the priest sees that there is no white hair on the bright place, and it is not deeper than the skin, and is not very bright, then let the priest keep him shut up for 7 days, and the priest is to see him again on the 7th day. If it is increased in the skin, then the priest will say that he is unclean, it is the leper's disease. And if the bright place keeps the same size and gets no greater on the skin, but is less bright, it is the effect of the burn, and the priest will say that he is clean, it is the mark of the burn. And when a man or a woman has a disease on the head, or in the hair of the chin, then the priest is to see the diseased place, and if it seems to go deeper than the skin, and if there is thin yellow hair in it, then the priest will say that he is unclean, he has the mark of the leper's disease on his head or in the hair of his chin. And after looking at the diseased place, if it does not seem to go deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest will have him shut up for 7 days, and on the 7th day the priest will see the place, and if it is not increased, and there is no yellow hair in it, and it does not seem to go deeper than the skin, then his hair is to be cut off, but not on the diseased place, and he is to be shut up for 7 days more, And on the seventh day the priest will see the place, and if it is not increased, and does not seem to go deeper than the skin, the priest will say that he is clean, and after his clothing has been washed he will be clean. But if the disease in his skin becomes worse after he has been made clean, then the priest is to see him, and if the mark is increased, the priest, without looking for the yellow hair, will say that he is unclean. But if, in his opinion, the growth is stopped, and black hair has come up on it, the disease has gone, he is clean, and the priest will say that he is clean. And if a man or a woman has bright marks on the skin of their flesh, that is, bright white marks, then the priest is to see them, and if the white marks on their skin are not very bright, it is a skin disease which has come out on the skin, he is clean. And if a man's hair has come out and he has no hair, still he is clean. And if the hair has gone from the front part of his head, so that he has no hair there, still he is clean. But if, on his head or on his brow, where he has no hair, there is a red and white place, it is the disease of the leper coming out on his head or on his brow. Then if the priest sees that the growth of the disease has become red and white on his head or on his brow where there is no hair, like the mark in the skin of a leper, he is a leper and unclean. The priest is to say that he is most certainly unclean. The disease is in his head, and the leper who has the disease on him is to go about with signs of grief, with his hair loose and his mouth covered, crying, "Unclean, unclean." While the disease is on him, he will be unclean. He is unclean, let him keep by himself, living outside the tent circle. And any clothing of wool or of linen in which is the mark of the disease, if it is in the threads of the linen or of the wool, or in leather, or in anything made of skin, if there are red or green marks on the clothing, or on the leather, or in the threads of the cloth, or in anything made of skin, it is the leper's disease. Let the priest see it, and after it has been seen by the priest, the thing which is so marked is to be shut up for 7 days, and he is to see the mark on the 7th day. If the mark is increased in the clothing, or in the threads of the material, or in the leather, whatever the leather is used for, it is the disease biting into it, it is unclean. And the clothing, or the wool or linen material, or anything of leather in which is the disease, is to be burned, for the disease is biting into it, let it be burned in the fire. And if the priest sees that the mark is not increased in the clothing or in any part of the material or in the leather, then the priest will give orders for the thing on which the mark is, to be washed, and to be shut up for 7 days more. And if, after the mark has been washed, the priest sees that the color of it is not changed and it is not increased, it is to be burned in the fire. The disease is working in it, though the damage may be inside or outside. And if the priest sees that the mark is less bright after the washing, then let him have it cut out of the clothing or the leather or from the threads of the material. And if the mark is still seen in the clothing or in the threads of the material or in the leather, it is the disease coming out. The thing in which the disease is will have to be burned with fire. And the material of the clothing, or anything of skin, which has been washed, if the mark has gone out of it, let it be washed a second time and it will be clean. This is the law about the leper's disease in the thread of wool or linen material, in clothing or in anything of skin, saying how it is to be judged clean or unclean.